กราบสวัสดีแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านนะครับ Well and good afternoon, honorable guests, distinguished guests, honorable guests, and also speakers, panelists, contributors, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to today's prestigious conference, which is the Bangkok Post conference. I'm pretty sure there are many friends of Bangkok Post who have attended several occasions already in the previous years. And each and every year, because this is an annual event, is dedicated to different discussions and different themes. And in the 21st century, people are now focusing on the development of artificial intelligence. In the past, people might think, well, this topic seems to be very far away from us. It will be totally irrelevant to us. Why do we need to pay attention to it? But nowadays, there are many and several questions addressed upon these topics. How far has it been developed so far as business implications? And how can we coexist together with them, development of the AI harmoniously, where we both live happily together? And today the theme is dedicated to this theme, not only think, but deep think how AI or artificial intelligence will change the world. There are several questions to be addressed and to be answered, and I'm pretty sure that the two conferences here today, the two roundtable discussions, will definitely offer a lot of prestigious answers to those questions. And now I would like to first proceed further to the formality for this afternoon Bangkok Post conference, and I would like to invite upon the stage the Vice Chairman of the Bangkok Post Public Company Limited to deliver a welcome remark as well as the opening speech. Please give a big warm welcome to Kun Warachai Pichanchit.
Excellency, distinguished members of the diplomatic corps, captains of business and industry, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all, and thank you for coming to this Deep Think, How AI Will Change the World conference. The conference is one of several events to be held as part of celebration this year to mark 73rd anniversary of founding of the Bangkok Post newspaper. In 73 years of being at the forefront of news in Thailand, our organization had witnessed change to the world in various aspects, including technological development. For decades, people have fantasized about a future with intelligent devices, robots, smart homes, smart factory, autonomous vehicles, and personal assistants that will make their life easier, safer, and better. Recent developments of the most advanced technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning, are turning fantasy into reality. AI and machine learning are beginning to transform multiple industries, such as finance, healthcare, retail, agriculture, and media, as well as people behavior. How many people these days could survive the day without their trusty smartphone? We already rely on this handheld computer for communication, navigation, acquiring knowledge, receiving important information, and a host of other activities. AI has also been making its way onto this smartphone. This conference is organized to serve as a platform to explore the strategic enable and trend of AI and to identify challenging areas of technology, both in Thailand and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this event would not be possible without the support of our sponsor. It would also not be possible without the presence of our guests. On behalf of Bangkok Post Public Company Limited, I would like to thank you for your support and for accepting our invitation to join us for this event. Welcome to the Deep Think, How AI Will Change the World. Thank you, and I wish all of you a fruitful day ahead. Thank you again.
Well, thank you very much, the Vice Chairman, Bangkok Post Public Company Limited, for the opening remarks as well as the welcome remark address. Well, time flies, 7 decades already for the Bangkok Post, and each and every single year they organize such a prestigious conference to let everyone know about the trend as well as to discover the answers to the questions towards those trends. And this year, as we all know, AI, artificial intelligence. Well, there are many questions to be addressed here. Somebody said, well, it has been developed, but how far as business implications? How can we learn more about the AI as part to compensate, somebody said, weakness of the human beings? How can it complement our capacities and ability? But at the same time, people would think, well, how can we coexist together with the development of the AI? Will all of us be replaced by the AI? And the first panel discussions is called How AI is Affecting Business Today. This will be addressing the business implication has been developed so far through artificial intelligence. And the second panel discussions for today is called Down the Road, Savior or Villain. It sounds like scientific fiction. One side, it is the saviors of our world, but at the same time, people have a lot of questions. Will they replace the workforce in among the human beings? Sounds like sci-fi. We will find out together in these two topics. And the first topic, as I said, how AI is affecting business today. Today, we have an honor as well as pleasure to have a very, very high-profile speakers in both of the sessions. But before we start the session, I would like to remind all of you that all of you are entitled to ask questions. We will provide pieces of paper as you can write down your questions along the way that you listen to the panel discussions. But one remark, please write them down in a readable manner. Because some of them might, for example, for me, myself, forgot my long sight glasses today, just to ensure all the key questions will be answered this afternoon. It seems that preparation over there is ready. And now I would like to invite upon the stage the speakers for the first panel discussion under the theme, How AI is Affecting Business Today. First, I would like to invite upon the stage the head of AI and data value, Google Asia Pacific, Mr. Jake Lukey. Please give him a big warm welcome. And our second speaker for this afternoon, he is the partner for McKinsey and Company, Mr. Harry Siep. Please give him a big warm welcome. And our third panelist who will contribute his input on the stage here is the President of Artificial Intelligence Association of Thailand, or AiAT for short. Please give a big warm welcome to Professor Dr. Thanarat Thira Mankong. And our fourth contributors for this round is the co-founder of Skooldio, Google developers, expert in machine learning, and ex-Facebook data scientist, Dr. Virod Jira Pathanakun. Please give him a big warm welcome as well. And this panel will be moderated by the CEO and the co-founder of Synapse Thailand. Please give a big warm welcome to the moderator, Dr. Chanwit Bunchui. And gentlemen, now the floors belong to all of you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Witt. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session on how AI is affecting business today. It's pretty interesting issue, right? All of us, probably before we start the session, I want, know all of you, probably we are from different background, right? And different, experience. How many of you know pretty well about AI? How many of you have followed the news? Some, just some, just 5%. So how about the other? How many of you don't know about AI? I mean, no idea what is AI, how to use AI, just come today, just want to know today. How many of you? Please show. Okay. I think many people are in between, right? So it's pretty good. Okay, nice. Thank you all panelists today. And this is a remarkable group of people who are working in AI area. So as we know together, because the MC already introduced us, right? So actually we should start with the background of panelists because we are so different background. And probably we start with Jackie, because Jackie is from Google, big company, and he's based in Hong Kong, right? Could you please share your background a little bit to the audience?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I used to live in Bangkok for many years, so it's always feels like coming home when I get to come back for these opportunities. In terms of my background, I'm actually a lawyer by training, not a computer scientist. So when I joined Google, it was a very big technical leap for me to start going to lots of meetings with people who actually know what they're talking about when they talk about AI. And so I know a bit, but my background's really in law and policy. And so my role at Google is mainly working with governments, with businesses, academics, thinking about the ways that policy frameworks can enable the growth of the AI ecosystem, applications of AI in socially beneficial ways, healthcare, energy, things like that. And also thinking about the ways that we can manage risks or concerns that we might have around AI, things, safety or privacy or things like that. And then also working with our engineers to find ways that they can take their technical expertise and then apply that to particularly important projects, which I can share more about.
I want to ask you, because you are not technical background, right? So it is hard for you to join the data team, and work on data and AI right now.
Yeah, it wasn't. At the beginning, it was very hard. I sat in a lot of meetings where I kind of looked around and thought, I have no idea what has happened. But now I've been doing this for a few years, and I spend a lot of time with those folks, so I feel much more comfortable now, and I feel like it's really opened up a new world for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Harry, could you please share your background a little bit?
Thank you. สวัสดีครับทุกคน My name is Harry Saib. I'm a partner in McKinsey & Company's Bangkok office, and I lead our digital and analytics work in Thailand. My background is actually in engineering and artificial intelligence, but a long time ago. And then I decided to go into business. So by now, I'm not anymore familiar with the deep technical parts, but I used to be part of that. And in my work, I get to have the privilege to support our clients here in Thailand on thinking about disruptive technologies, of which AI is definitely a big one that is on top of mind of CEOs today, and help them grapple and think about how do we create value out of it, how do we unlock that, and how do we gear our organizations up to capture that value for all stakeholders. And I'm happy to share some of the learnings I've had in doing that work here in Thailand with you all today.
All right, thank you, Harry. Nice. Okay, Professor Thanalak, could you please, because Professor Thanalak is, I think he studied AI, I think more than 20 years. So could you please share your background and could you please share a little bit AI concept to the audience? It's probably new for them, right? Okay.
Thank you. Maybe thank you Nimas to introduce me. I'm Thanalak. I'm now in Thammasat University, teaching there, and later we established association we call AI Association of Thailand. AI Association of Thailand just only 3 years old, but I think for the total AI in the world, it's more than 50 or 60 years. So it's quite long history. But now it's become people more, attack more people because of it's become the real, more practical element can be done. right now. So that's why. But I also working on this area for 20 years, as you said.
Okay.
Yes, 20 years.
Okay.
Because I study in Japan from 1985. Yeah, after high school. Yes, and after that I do the AI relate to the language, natural language processing, how to cope with language using algorithm, computers. And at that time, artificial intelligence startup, artificial neural network startup at that time, 1985 or something. But nowadays we call it deep learning. Deep learning, but it's based on the artificial neural network at that time. At that time, I work on the language part, but many researchers says that you should not go to the ANN because we don't know the meaning. After we mining from ANN, we don't know the meaning.
Because there are no technical background actually.
Yes.
So I want to ask you that what is AI? Could you please share the idea of AI?
The AI. Okay. Yes. AI. I think. When I run to the university, we have a laboratory to select. At that time, there are some like the VLSI, how to build the chip. Some of them network, how to build the network. Some of them relate to the software, how to create the software.
Okay.
But many laboratory relate to the AI.
Okay.
And that AI is how to make the machine can do the task that human can do, but machine cannot do. At that time.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, understand speech, understand image, or something like the mining something from some data and understand what is inside. That human can do well, but machine cannot do well.
Okay.
Yeah. At that time, machine can do calculator.
Yep.
Yeah, they'll calculate or Excel, Word. Yeah, simple thing. Yes. And nowadays, machine try to do more.
Yeah.
That is why we have this meeting also.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So that is the definition of AI: how to make the machine can do the thing that human can do. But in the future, I don't know that AI maybe definition change.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because of maybe machine can do
better,
and then you better than human.
Okay.
And you feel like this is not fantastic again.
Okay, thank you, Professor Thalat.
Not fantastic anymore.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
okay, the last one, Dr. Wilod, he also AI expert also, and he built a business in Thailand also. Could you please share your background a little bit?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Virat. I'm a computer scientist by training. I did AI before it was cool as well. I did speech recognition for a tiny robot like 20 years ago, and it could understand like 5 words, and that was already fantastic. So I switched. I stopped doing computer scientist, stopped being computer scientist, and pursue my career in operations research, which is math, basically. We do a lot of math, try to optimize a lot of system, and we end up doing a lot of things with data. So after I got my PhD from MIT, I joined Facebook as a data scientist, and I was a data scientist there for 3 years before I came back, and then I co-found my company called Skooldio. Skoolio's mission is to help individuals master today's most in-demand skill. The thing is, technology has changed so fast these days, and a lot of companies need to reskill their workforce. A lot of even students in university, they really need to get trained on things that might not traditionally taught in school. So we try to fill that gap. So I think my background sort of overlap with many people here. I work with Facebook, just like Jack with Google. I work with companies in Thailand, helping them starting data team in the company, just like McKinsey. And I also teach part-time at Chulalongkorn University as well.
Okay.
So I'm like a little bit of everything here.
Oh, that's great, because we need this kind of people in Thailand, actually. So I want to ask all of you that right now, what state of AI, in the world? Because is it ready for commercial use, or it's just begin for like a marketing campaign? This is my question. Harry, you share me first.
Yeah, so I think that if the question is AI and related technologies like machine learning ready for commercial use,
Yes.
it's already being used commercially. So the answer in short would be yes. Companies like Facebook, Google are using very advanced technologies and AI already to deliver certain use cases, right? I think the Google Voice Assistant or Duo is an example of that. What is the next wave, I think, is how do you democratize that, where from the research labs to the big tech companies, usually around Silicon Valley or in Shenzhen, actually, a lot of it is happening, towards where around the corner or SMEs can also commercialialize that. And that's, I think, the next wave that is happening also here in Thailand.
How about Jack? You think, because you work at Google, right? So you do AI for a long time actually, and you have, but you know, could you share the idea that how AI can expand to other company also?
Yeah, sure. So at Google, we have this company-wide mission now, which we refer to as AI for everyone. And within that, it really has 3 pillars. And so the first of those is obviously around deploying AI in our products, which I think Harry referenced there. And it's used in pretty much all of our core products now that you might be familiar with. You know, everything from Google Translate to Maps to search. We basically use AI across all of our major products. But a second pillar of that is actually creating tools and resources that enable other actors to then deploy AI. So to give you a couple of examples of that, if you think about why has AI grown so much, so quickly, there's basically a few core ingredients if you want to cook an AI soup. So one is you need to have data, right? And so in some cases you need a lot of data, but in other cases you actually can do things with smaller data sets, provided they're very high quality. So one thing you need is data. Another thing is you need as models or algorithms that actually then you can take that data and do something with it. A third thing that you need is computing power. And for a long time, computing power was very expensive. And so it was very difficult for most people to do AI because they didn't have the resources, the computing resources they needed. And then you need talent. You need people to actually train the systems. And so if we think about these 4 ingredients, nowadays there's increasingly data available for lots and lots of companies out there. Most companies, if they actually sit down and look, they have access to some data, either through their own existing operations or because of publicly available data sets, which are increasingly available now. There's also increasing availability of algorithms and models. So at Google, we have something called TensorFlow, which is basically an open source software library that anyone can use. You can get on GitHub and access it right now. And it has a whole lot of different machine learning software models that people can use to apply to all sorts of problems. Now that, you still need some degree of expertise to use. But we've also been looking at ways that we can use our cloud services to make it even easier for other companies to use. So just to give an example of that, we have something called AutoML on cloud. And this basically means that if you're a company and you have some data that you have already, but you don't have anyone in-house with machine learning expertise who knows how to create models for that data, you can actually just upload your data into AutoML on cloud and then use pre-trained models that we have already there available and then do machine learning without even having any machine learning expertise in-house. All you need is data and someone to go through and label the data. That's basically all you need. So what this means is that with these types of services, plus the much cheaper cost of computing power through cloud services, now companies can access AI in a much greater volume than they could in the past. And so for us, what we're trying to do is think about ways we can both support companies, but also governments and others to solve problems at a much higher scale than we could before.
That's great. Thank you. Dr. Velo, could you please add a little bit about AI in Thailand?
I actually just want to add on to Jake. One of the key ingredients of all AI models is data. And I think this is the area where the impact of AI is sort of limited right now, because I think all the companies that can get on this AI train very quickly are those technology companies, because you have all the digital touch points. Everything is collected as a digital data in the first place. So these companies have tons of data that they can work on. They can start iterating on models very quickly. But a lot of us in here, I believe, we might be in industries in which we don't collect that much of data, we probably have to start thinking about that. And I think it's a very first and most important step of getting started using AI in your business.
Thank you. Professor Thanalak, I think you can give some view because you are in academic also. You do research in AI, and you think AI is ready for commercial use in Thailand?
I think some part is correct, some part is not correct yet.
Uh-huh.
Because I think people talk about the AI in different aspects. Sometimes people have more expectation on the AI. Like maybe we think that, we have a lot of engine, we have power, then we can do anything. But in the real, sometimes I think some tasks still cannot solve yet. Yeah, sometimes they call this is the AI in general and AI in some specific domain. I think we can use AI for a specific domain now, and can use it more than what we can do in the past. But for the AI in general, it's still on the process of developing. For example, understand people conversation. I think only speaking and typing up is not enough. Or like the chatbot, that someone use that chatbot, talking with the chatbot, and maybe you think that, that is fantastic. But it still lack of something. Like the don't understand in depth. Okay, today the name of the team here is deep thinking. I think to have deep thinking, we still need some years. For me, I feel like still some year. But of course, now we have a big step because of the, as just said, we have power, more power, computing power. We have data. Yeah, we have a lot of data and algorithm, many. So then we can do the thing that the past cannot do. And the simple task maybe will be replaced first, like the automation. Yeah, even for the driving, auto driving or something, it's also possible to replace by the computer or the AI. Yeah, but some maybe that use knowledge, like human understanding. If it deep into the human understanding, I think still need time for me. So in the case of, I work here for 20 years and suddenly people talk about the AI in simple way. And I feel like, even somebody said, natural language processing is nothing. It's simple. For me, it is expert for a long time. I feel hurt on that word.
You can be professor in NLP, right?
Yeah, I was in NLP. So people, it's easy. Even the one who working on different area, but said, NLP easy something. And then chatbot, because of chatbot, blah, blah, blah here.
NLP is a natural language processing. It's about how to make computer understand our language. It's really tough area actually.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask another question on AI application. What kind of application that can use AI and it could be significant? Could you please share some application that you have?
Yeah, sure. So there are lots of areas that where there's exciting applications, but just to pick a couple, one is healthcare. I think one of the industries that we're already seeing very exciting applications for AI is in the healthcare domain. And so some of it's around diagnostics, so being able to diagnose diseases at scale. We've actually been partnering with a hospital here in Thailand, Ratchawithi Hospital, to use AI to diagnose diabetic retinopathy, which is a disease that affects diabetics where their retinas and their eyes degrade, and then they can go blind. Now, this disease, once you go blind, it's irreversible, so you can never correct it. But if you diagnose it early, it actually can be very easily treatable. But because there's a shortage of ophthalmologists to diagnose these diseases, many people go undiagnosed and then end up going blind, about 45% of patients. So for that reason, we felt like this is a really great obvious application because using scans, basically just photos of someone's eye, you can now diagnose it at the same level as ophthalmologists can. So there's lots and lots of examples like this. And it's also ones where you don't necessarily need to have huge data. So this is something that I think a lot of people think, if I don't have access to thousands and thousands of images, can I do this? There are hospitals now that are diagnosing skin cancer based on a data set of 190 images in the US, just 190. Now, they can do that because they're very high-quality images that are very well-suited for the task they're trying to use. So if you're trying to do something very complex, you may need a bigger data set because you need to be able to reduce the influence of outliers, and kind of the long tail of data sets. But if you have a very high-quality data set that's very well-suited to your purpose, you actually don't need to have vast troves of data to be able to develop solutions. So that's just one example, but I think there's amazing applications in energy to reduce energy usage that we're already seeing. It's quite a lot.
I want to ask you the last application about the medical. How we trust AI to do that job, that task?
Well, the thing is you're not actually doing the treatment based on AI. This is just the diagnostic. Okay. So even if the AI makes a mistake, then when the patient goes to actually see the doctor for treatment, the doctor can look and say, oh, well, there was a mistake. But it's performing at about 95% accuracy, which is the same, even slightly better than traditional ophthalmologists.
Okay, that's great. That's great. How about you, Harry?
Yeah. Let me give 3 examples in 3 different industries to show you also the breadth of what AI can do. So the first is in financial services or any industry that has a lot of customer interaction. What I've seen is through combination of a chatbot, natural language processing, and a lot of data on preferences based on past transactions that are digitized. We can pretty much do a lot of service requests and even sales completely automatic, where there's no human operator on the other side, and therefore scale up much faster and also give a cost to serve, right, for customers and products that you couldn't do before. So it is very exciting, and where AI specifically in speech and chat is combined with data about the customer to deliver that in a good way. The second is more in heavy industry. And there is a more combination of sensor data of the IoT sensors together with these kind of models and algorithms that we've talked about to, as much as possible, try to run the plant automatically. So you have predictive maintenance, so you know before there's a fire that this part needs to be replaced. There's a throughput or yield optimization that can, based on even the skills of the operators there, up or downscale production. And what gets me really excited at these examples is that you digitize a lot of the data. You apply some of the models that are first built with human expertise, but then trained on their own actions, so self-learning, and then actually give a lot of recommendations. But it works in concert with still operators. So the control room, there's still a human, maybe similar to the doctor, that's sitting there and essentially has so much more leverage, right? So where maybe first you needed per plant 20 people, you can now do with 10 people, you can do all the plants in Thailand. And that kind of leverage is really what brings a lot of value. And the last one is in sustainability. So there we see methods where you actually use a lot of computer vision and image recognition to do waste separation, specifically plastics, before it goes into ocean, using AI so that you don't have to anymore rely on, for instance, people putting it in the right trash bin or making sure that there's no harmful substances coming into the local wastewater elements, right? So, and that's enabled because computer vision can do this automatically and train, and is quite accurate enough to really make a difference in wastewater treatment and in waste treatment.
Thank you, Harry. Because we have a lot of application, but I want to ask Professor Thanalak because he really expert in LP that the major application is chatbot, right? My question is how to make chatbot much smarter.
That's a good
significantly.
Good I think, Dr. Vinod also talking about the data. Data is important.
Okay.
I think to make the chatbot become more intelligent, we need more data. Yeah, data about the world, data about what we talking about, or even the content that we talking now. In the right now, I think to develop intelligence one, we need to make the chatbot can remember what they talk and can connect to the world in order to know what happened there, in order to answer something that not just only in the closed loop, but also have information from outside. And also, they need to have emotion or something that more fantastic. I think that not just only talk like the mean, everyone talk the same. It should have some characteristics. This kind of the thing that in the future is a chatbot or NLP, or we should call it NLU. The natural language understanding is more than NLP, but it's understanding. Understanding means deep understanding, deep thing is the real deep thing. But it can be happen if the data have more data, and more important than that is the standard of the data. Standard of the data, right? The link open data or link data that they link together, and they have semantic that embedded inside. And people can have collaborative work together in order to embed that one inside. And finally, maybe the machine can stay for a long time. But human, we have limited
machine
limitation.
not old.
Machine not old and not die.
But we are we are
immortal,
old.
but machine not die. So machine can accumulate information.
That's great.
Become much clever.
Okay.
And one day it can be the what we call the superhuman that know everything in the world more than us. And we just only 100 years and change. When we change, we need to learn again. Except that you can remember the previous life. And so you get an accumulate. But machine can do that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
That is the point.
Thank you, Professor Thanak. Dr. Wilon, you may share the application, and also I think data analytics is also issue for the business in our country also.
Okay, sure. I'll talk to applications. One area that I think we're going to see a lot more AI adoption is any business involve customer relationship management, CRM, especially if you have digital touchpoint. It means you're going to have a lot more data. And one thing that all companies been doing is try to personalize digital experience, right? You go into YouTube, Facebook these days, your newsfeed is your newsfeed. It will be totally different from your friends. Your YouTube is totally different from your friends too. Because all this company has been collecting all of your data, they know exactly what you want, and then they know how to engage with you. If you're a retailer, you should be able to tell this particular customer is of which type. They're looking for deals, they're looking for certain types of items, I don't know. If you can predict that, then you can easily take action, and that would affect your business, the top line number directly. So I think that's the area where a lot of people will flock into, try to give recommendation, try to upsell, try to cross-sell, try to do everything to make a lot more money from your customers. So I think that's the area in which people would flock into and try to get AI involved. But the area that I think very interesting is actually healthcare as well, because I think Dr. Thanarak touched on that. Computer never gets old. And also, in order for you to train in ophthalmology, you probably need like 10 years until someone can become an expert. Every day you go have a round with your professor. If you're lucky, you might find some interesting case. Hey, okay, today I learned something. If you are lucky, you just keep doing the same old work every single day. It takes you 10 years until you accumulate enough knowledge to become expert in ophthalmology, right? But once computer figured this out, you want to scale that, that's easy. You just copy and paste, run it on any computer, and it works just fine. So I think these are the areas in which it's really hard to get human to that level, but it becomes much easier to get computer to that level. So I think this is the area that is very interesting, and also given the state of our society right now, there's a big gap in healthcare quality between the rich and the poor. So this fill in the gap very nicely. So I think the world is actually really need this.
Thank you. How about the data analytics? Because I think in company, there are a lot of data, but how can they use that kind of data to help their business?
Okay. Usually when people ask about how we can get started with data, I would always talk about three things. The easiest way to get started, measure something out of your business. Get the data and measure it. Have some metrics so that you can look at. You can monitor how well are you doing. If you go and look at technology company, we monitor like hundreds of numbers all the time. We know exactly the users are growing here. We know exactly user like this, user like that. So we can take action really quickly. We can find opportunities or risks in the business very quickly. So if you collect the data well and you monitor that, that's already a big, quick win for you. So that's the first step. Once you get the data, you start familiarize yourself using it to guide your business direction. The next step is to start having insights.
Yes.
Try to understand more of what your customers want, what's their behavior. Try to see patterns, try to see trends so that you can make better decisions, take better business actions, and you can then create better products or service for your customers. So that's the second level. And the third level would be create data product. Try to create a new product out of the data that you have. Presumably, you already have a lot of data, and you find way to create extra value of that data. One use case that I used to talk about a lot is one of the banks in Spain, BBVA. Given that they're a bank, they actually have these credit card machines all over the countries, right? So people go there, swipe their credit card, so they collect all this data. So they know everything related to financial status, but what they do, they actually take some of the data and they work with government. They help government track down tourists. They try to monitor where tourists are going in their countries. Which category of money do people spend on? They spend money on shopping, they spend money on accommodation, they spend money on food. Then they can help government make a better plan. Say, okay, then for this particular city, you probably want to promote tourism in this area. For this particular city, you probably want to do this, do that, right? So there are a lot of things that once you got a lot of data, you can do. You can transform one of your business and start doing others. If you talk startups, say Line. I'm sure all of you here use Line, right? Line, on the surface, is just a messaging app. Now they have Line Pay. You start paying money through them. You start paying money through them. They now know exactly your preference. You buy this, you buy that. You hop on BTS from this station to that station. They start collecting all this data, right? And recently, I think Line partnered up with K-Bank, right? And I think they're going to start partnering up with a lot more companies because once you have a lot of data...
Not only K-Bank, any bank, I think.
Any bank. So I think once you have a lot of data, there are a lot of opportunities for your business that you can pivot on and switch on and partner up with a lot of people because you really see what's going on with the company, with the society, with the economics of the country.
Okay, thank you. If you want to know more, please go to Skooldio platform.
Thank you.
Please go further and, Okay, that's great. So, actually, we know right now AI is available, many applications, have been used. So, my question is, how about the challenge in applying AI? For example, cost of implementation, data also you're discussing. Could you please share the view, how we start the AI project? Because sometimes the cost is pretty high, right? How company or business manage this issue?
Maybe I can give a start on it and how we approach it, both the challenges and how to deal with that in a way. I think the first part that when businesses think about disruptive technologies like AI or machine learning or even blockchain, there's a lot of tendency to get amazed by the technology and by the possibilities and the science fiction part of it. But then we really try to work together to bring back to where's the value? And having a very clear view for your business, how do you create value? How can it maybe change because of technology? So what are opportunities? But then how by serving the customer or by making a product or delivering a service, do you create value? Because AI ultimately should be a tool to help deliver and increase that value, right? So having a clear business case or a value map on where does AI make a difference, right? Instead of having a shiny toy. And then when we then start the transformation, I think there's a couple of things. I think we talked a lot about data. So when we look at it, we actually look at 3 areas and what we call the triple transformation. around the business transformation that needs to happen, a technology transformation that needs to happen, and a people or organizational transformation that needs to happen at the same time. And that makes it so difficult, because where do you start, right? A lot of times the first thing is that we don't have data, or our data is locked away in some data warehouse, and we cannot use our data. That issue is definitely there, and we have that in Thailand maybe more than in some Western countries. But typically that's not really the unlock, because even with the limited data you have, if you know which use cases there's, usually the data you have is already a good start. But then how do you create this momentum? So we generally pick some lighthouses or first use cases where we look less about the ROI or about how much money does it make, but we really want to build and show, look what you can do by taking this data that you already had, working with some algorithms, data scientists, looking at it, linking it to the business value, and it actually works. And it might work like as a minimum viable product. It might not be yet for everyone or for every segment, but you've proven a step. And that is a very important first step, because it makes people in your organization who are maybe more skeptical believe in that. And once you get that momentum, then people get excited and you scale, and then will also be more pull from the business, say, hey, can the AI team come to my part, because I also want to get that. It looks like very useful. And then you have to help by putting in the technology in there, right? So the data architecture. You have to help by rethinking how does your business operating model change in terms of people, in terms of your touch points, in terms of the services. And most important, and that's a big issue here in Thailand, how do we upskill our people? Both attracting new talent, maybe getting them from Silicon Valley and going to Google or Facebook and McKinsey and trying to get those people. Looking a lot at universities, right? So the AI students have a very good future ahead of them. But equally important, how do you build an internal academy or training to upskill people who might not traditionally be seen as AI experts?
We will talk this issue later on, okay? Yeah. Because about human development.
Exactly, because that's very important blocker that we see and that we have to grapple with our clients.
And I have a great question. So, how about Jack, you have a slide? You want to share something on your slide also, if you want to share? Okay. So, how about, what do you think about the issue that how we start the AI project and, you know, cost, benefit, something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything that Harry said. I think another key piece is around identifying the problem that you actually want to solve and then defining what success looks like. I think one mistake that we often see is it's not really clear whether AI is going to be the best solution for a particular problem or not, and to what extent an AI system needs to interact with a human. So one thing that can happen when companies begin deploying AI is they begin deferring too much to the results of AI. And AI is not a silver bullet that will, you know, perform well in all circumstances. So sometimes it may be that an automated system provides a useful input in a decision-making process that is still led by a human. And so not kind of falling victim to automation bias where, you know, the computer says yes kind of syndrome is very important. So making sure that, and this is back to the human piece, which is making sure that you actually have the expertise within your company to identify the right problem, define what success looks like, and build a culture of understanding, you know, human-computer interaction, how humans can interact with machines in ways that achieve greater results and don't actually make the situation worse than when you started.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Professor, you want to share something?
For me, I feel like in the future, the one that we need to do is how to make connecting between the AI resources. It will look like the supply chain in the AI product. I think this one will make faster and increasing the progress of the AI. Nowadays, I think AI is local. For example, just only for the medical in the eye area only. But if it can connect with the other, maybe we can do more and more. And how to make them have the standard that can connect with each other, that will be the issue in the future. And I think it will be happen. And we will change into the general AI in the future.
You love AGI, huh? You love,
Yes,
huh?
I love that one. So one day it will be something like in the movie.
Okay.
You see it in the movie.
I will send my son study with you actually. So.
This movie,
Okay.
AI movie.
Dr. Bilod, could you please share how we start the AI project?
Okay.
Also,
For me, I think I just gonna leave with getting started is more important than being right. I think a lot of companies have been talking about we're gonna start big data initiative, we're gonna start doing AI, and we keep talking and talking and talking. We spent 3 months finding vendors. We spent another 3 months getting everyone to come in and present and evaluate them.
Okay.
It takes you another 6 months to start collecting data, so years pass and you're just getting started. While you can actually getting started like really quickly. We have vendors here today, IBM, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. These companies have cloud service. You want to start doing something quickly, upload your data there. You can start like in 2 days. So you don't have to like wait for approval for the whole company. You don't have to invest 100 millions just to start an AI project. And a lot of people here already said, you don't need big data. Small data that is relevant, that address exactly your business problem is still relevant. So getting started, don't trying to be right or try to get the perfect solution the first time because you won't get there no matter what.
Thank you. As Harry discussed about the human development, is a very important box to link, to create a new project also, internal and external. So you have the experience in this area?
Yeah, and I think there's two large dimensions on it. So first is how do you as a company make your workforce ready to be able to work with AI or to develop these kind of new solutions. And then second, there's maybe a social impact from what happens if AI is doing many more tasks that today are being done by humans, and how do we deal with that, right? So let me talk a bit about the first one. I think it's the biggest challenge, specifically when scaling up. So when you start, you maybe need 4 or 5 people and a good idea, and indeed the mindset to get something out of the door very fast and then iterate. But when you really want to deploy these kind of technologies at scale, you need to retool your organization. And then very fast you come to the skill gaps. For instance, data scientist, right? So if I would go to the Thai LinkedIn and put all the data scientists together, I cannot even staff 1 client, right? And we have maybe 10 clients that all want to have the same data scientist. So again, it's good to be a data scientist, but there's really a gap of knowledgeable people in Thailand. Data engineering, which is underneath it, is essentially the connecting the different wires and databases so that you can, as a data scientist, take a look at it. That's a very important skill, and in some cases even more scarce. Another role that we've identified in our research with McKinsey that is super important is the translator role. And let me explain what is the translator role. Is a person who is not necessarily an expert or data scientist expert, but knows enough about it to understand what is possible and what is not, but also has a business insight and acumen to be able to translate between what does a customer want or what does the business need, what kind of problems do we need to solve, and be able to help instruct the technical team on what to solve for. And that link is missing in a lot of companies. I think the good news is that there are hidden pockets of this kind of talent if you are willing to look for it and are willing to look beyond the job description, right? So I think in Thailand itself, it's not only if you studied computer science that you can work in data science or even data engineering, and definitely not in translator, but even in organizations. So if I take an example of an insurance company, even 5 years ago didn't have data scientists, but they do have actuaries that have for years and years built very advanced statistical models. If you take the actuaries who are interested and put them to even a minimal training, they can be super effective as translators or sometimes even data scientists. So there's definitely a way out, but it requires a commitment and a long-term investment in building these kind of capabilities.
All right. Thank you. For education person, we have Professor Thanarak. We need to have the AI program in Thailand.
Yes. In the we have AI teaching in the university level, but it's just only one subject. Yes.
Right.
Now
today, set up the program like AI degree.
Yeah. Previously, we want to have the data side. So now we put on the data side. Now AI become more popular. So we think about we have AI program. Yeah. I think in China they did it already. Even put the AI in the high school level or secondary school level. Yeah. I think even that we need to have. Now for association, as an association, AI Association of Thailand, we work with the EC and we go to teach the high school teacher there, and secondary teacher there about the AI. And then we hope that one day AI will be one of the subject taught in the high school level soon. Some high school have done it, like the what we call in Asok, Sinakli Milot School and Kasesa School also. They try to involve with us in the AEC, and we talk about search, about the deep learning concept, or Python or something. Yeah, I think programming skill also need to down to that level one day. And for the university, we also need to change, because nowadays you can see the knowledge from YouTube. No need to come to listen to teacher. Indeed, you can find knowledge from there. But for the skill, how to work, or if you meet with the problem, how to solve it, I think this one we need expert to help. But for knowledge, for example, what is the syntax of this something? So they no need. They just only go to see in the website. Yeah. Sometimes I think if we teach how to find, that is more important than we teach it directly to the student. That is the point. And in university, we need to change the portion. I want to reduce the number of credit down, and then make more room for students to explore and push hand-on practice there. And of course, it may relate with AI, many of them. For example, to take the problem from industry and let the student think how to solve it using AI, computing, or other knowledge like material science or blah, blah, blah. So that will be very important for our future.
That's great.
Because the knowledge, maybe you can let AI do it.
Okay.
But for the skill, I think a human should do better than
okay, we will discuss this issue. Dr. Vilod, could you please share the idea on the human development?
Okay, for human development, so I mean, I work on this directly at my company, Skooldio. The way we look at it, we separate it into clear tracks. First track is for non-programmer, non-technical. As Harry mentioned, we need a lot of translator in the company. And data is everyone's responsibility in a company. If you are a 1,000 people company, you can't just rely on these 10 data scientists. Everybody in your company should have a basic understanding of data and machine learning, and at least they should be able to identify opportunities. Like, this is a good area. This is the task we have been doing repeatedly, and computers should be able to do this easily instead of us. Then you know that this is the opportunity, and you know how to frame the problem, and you can walk to your data scientists and tell them, hey, this is what we want. This is the input. We want the output like this. Can you build a model for us? So I think that is the one track that all the non-technical people should still know, and it's going to become more and more important in the future, I believe. For another track, for technical, I think all universities now have AI courses. The problem is a lot of students kind of want shortcuts. I just want to be practitioner. I just want this title very quickly. So yes, you can achieve that in a very short term. You can start learning about deep learning, what is it? And you can start talking about it. But without the foundation, as soon as the new algorithm comes out, you will be totally lost. and you won't be able to follow up what is going on there. The algorithm I used for speech recognition 15 years ago, no one using it anymore. It's super outdated. So you need to be able to update it yourself almost all the time. So that's one thing, the strong foundation. The other part is to gain more experience on the business side. One thing that a lot of AI practitioners don't have is that I can build a model. If you can frame a problem for me, throw me a nice clean data set, I'll be able to do it for you. But in reality, it's not like that. You probably have to walk around the company and ask around and try to find that opportunities. So if you have the ability to frame the problem, if you can see the data and can identify what would be the biggest impact you can achieve out of this data, then you become a much, much better AI practitioners. And this is a big gap because to be able to do this, you need experience. You need like a good coach. So to be able to do that, it means that all companies need to have like maybe middle management that's sort of technical, that can sort of guide these people and develop them through their careers. So right now, the tricky part is the company doesn't have the experts. We hire a bunch of new grad data scientists. No one coach them. They just keep burning your money and not creating any impact for your company.
Sure. All right. Thank you. It's fantastic. So, the same point I want to ask, because he is not technical background, right? But it's still important for the business.
Yeah, and I was just going to add one thing. I agree with everything that's been said here, but another dimension I think of preparing your workforce that's important is around ethical education for the use of AI as well, because there are certain vulnerabilities that AI systems have, where they can exacerbate risks of bias, for example. Maybe they'll perform well for certain populations, but not perform well for other populations. Maybe they might present risks around safety, depending on the application that you're using. So making sure that the folks that you have designing and maintaining your systems are ones who actually understand the potential vulnerabilities or risks within the systems and how those can be corrected. How do you actually visualize your data set and look at where it may not be representative of the population that you're trying to serve? Testing, doing adversarial testing to actually identify whether the system is performing as intended in particular use cases. There's a whole lot of good practices around the responsible development and use of AI that are improving all the time, and making sure that that is a core part of all AI education, I think is going to be really important for building trust in these technologies, because they're very new, and a lot of people don't understand them yet. And if they don't trust them, they'll be very uncomfortable engaging with automated systems. Yes. So this is very important to really build that trust, yes, and so that we can continue to grow the use of the technology over time.
That's great. That's great. So we have about 30 minutes, and probably if you have questions, you can ask us, and can be interactive session actually. If you have, and you can send the question. So you have microphone. I think so many questions from audience actually. So I could give him microphone also. Okay. Construction industry. Okay, the application on construction industry and construction company. How AI impact in this area? Construction. You have idea?
Architecture also. Construction. Yeah, I'm not in the construction, but SAT, for SAT, we have some construction department.
Okay, how to use AI.
But I think I see some trend that they try to use AI for planning, how to calculate the load when we create it. Yeah, you just only have the floor plan for each, and then AI can compute how much the concrete will be used, where to put the pillar or blah 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 here. So that one is related to the construction. So how AI can help this one. Sometimes we need an expert to calculate, but AI can replace this part that they can build and can calculate, because all of them is in the formula. Okay, but not just only the building, maybe load or blah blah blah, or city planning like the transportation. Transportation also one of the civil engineering. So how to calculate that which part we should have, which building or which area for commercial, for resident, or blah, 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 and how to connect them and then make it have no traffic jam. Or relate to how to design the city to have EV and sharing the EV or something there. That's like the smart city. Yeah, I think you can share something, please.
Yeah, I think in construction, I think one overall message is that it's really getting out of the tech companies and maybe banks and telcos who are the usual suspects into a lot of different industries, right? And maybe even 5 years ago, would say construction, no way for AI, but it is definitely there. I think if you take a value chain view on it, there are 4 areas. Clearly, when you have if you're a developer and you need to be able to understand where to build, what kind of units will have high demand, and how to sell them. If you get access to the right data and you need to invest in that, AI can help a lot in getting the ROI essentially on the sales. And if you do that well, you've already sold 80% of your condo before you start building. And that kind of forecasting power, AI can help in the commercial things. In construction itself, so if we're commercial or real estate development, the building information management and the ability to now digitize a lot of the blueprints and try to do scenario planning. That enables a lot of powerful applications for AI, where you can essentially real-time change the schedule, change materials, and test certain ideas. And as you get better and better at that, and as we get more data, more of these tasks can be automated. So the BIM is a big area. If you look at the lower down the value chain, and for the cement industry, for instance, supply chain and distribution, and here autonomous trucking and autonomous vehicles is a huge trend, right? And it will take out a lot of costs. It will enable certain deliveries and certain business models that are just not possible if you have to rely on a trucks as it is today. And then finally in the plants itself, right? So the production of some of the raw material, and I've talked about it before, there if you have the IoT sensors, there's a lot of more throughput and more utilization of the assets that you can get using AI.
All right, thank you. So a lot of questions over here. So the next question to Jack, and what are the conducive environment that are necessary for AI development using in the country?
Sure. Yeah, so going back to what I mentioned earlier around the ingredients that you need for AI, obviously one that we talked about is data, and there's a lot that policy can do to enable access to data. So one thing is around having clear regulatory environment for the collection and use of data by companies. Another area is actually making it easier for data to be disseminated. So some governments around the world are looking at creating things like data trusts, because there's often a lot of publicly available data that exists or that could be collected by the government and then made freely available for companies that want to make use of that for particular AI applications. Another area that we see countries looking at is intellectual property law, because, for example, there are some areas where it's not very clear to what extent AI research falls under existing fair use exceptions to copyright or not. So having a clear rule around that, to what extent fair use applies for AI research or doesn't, in what cases, will help to make it easier to use data sets that may have copyright attached to them, things like that. Another area that I would highlight here is around creating easier access to computing power. So as cloud services are growing, there are ways that policymakers can enable easier access to that, supporting investments in data centers, things like that. Of course, enabling talent, as we've talked about, so making sure you have enough talent in country by making sure your universities have programs to create enough computer scientists to do this kind of work is another key thing. And then finally, I would just say working cross-border, because there's a lot of issues that AI technologies really are global, right? So you need cross-border cooperation between governments. To give you an example of that, cross-border data flows. If I'm a Thai company that wants to try to also serve users in another country, making sure that data can flow cross-border is going to be very important for me to be able to actually grow my business abroad. So these are areas that require international cooperation and the right kind of local laws to do that.
All right, thank you. Another question on the data privacy. And we have the new Data Protection Act in Thailand, but I'm not sure about that. We have an expert over here, but anyway, if you have some idea to share about the data privacy or data, Protection Act, you can share if you have. Harry, you have any idea for data privacy?
Yeah, it is quite recent, right? So definitely the views are still being established. I think what I can say is that the new Data Privacy Act actually is taking a lot of cues from the European GDPR.
Okay.
So we would call this a very strong Data Privacy Act, which I think overall has some very good intentions, right? Because it will protect consumers, and this is kind of the balance of power between you as an individual wanting to use services and yes, having to click yes, but then what happens to your data? So it gives much more ownership and agency to that. So I think overall that intention as well. We do see, and this the discussion we have with clients is it takes a lot of investment to be able to comply, and it opens a lot of compliancy risks and operational risks on that, and not all Thai companies are ready for it. I know there's a 1-year implementation, but how do you handle it? How do you put the technical controls in place? How do you account for that, right? So how do you pay for that? Because it's not something that on the first day will return on the investment. That is what we are grappling with.
The question is, it affect to the business if the act is applied. I mean, if the Data Privacy Act is effective, is it effective to the business? How much it's effective to the business?
I think that the impact in the short term for businesses is increased risk that you need to address, and therefore increased investments to address that, which can be a negative consequence for some of the business, specifically smaller businesses who might not have these kind of budgets, right? So that is a unintended consequence. I think longer term, it will create, hopefully, a more environment where consumers can trust that the data is being used in their best interest, and that enables more innovation. So that should be better for us as a whole country. But in the short term, for a business owner, it's an additional cost that you have to address with, right, to comply.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay.
Okay, I think a little thing that I'm going to add would be more like for you all as consumers. I think it's also our responsibility to be careful, because a lot of times we just keep posting things and just think that people would treat your information the best way you hope for, and most of the time they don't. And also most of these acts, laws, policies and stuff, they're also in a gray area in the sense, is it okay to do this with this data, or is it not okay? For certain things, it's okay for a lot of people. For certain things, it's not okay for a lot of people. So I think it's all up to you. If you think certain information shouldn't be online, shouldn't be collected, I think it's your responsibility to go. And I think right now with GDPR, most of the services allow you to go and clean up your identity pretty easily now. So if you don't like your history on certain website, on certain services, you should be able to go there, clean up your history, and start a new canvas, nice and clean. So you should do that if that's your concern. So I'm just going to add on this consumer point of view.
So Thai law should follow GDPR, that's right?
I heard they plan to follow closely.
Okay, that's great. So another question is about the government. Wow, oh my God. The government should control AI development in the country or not? It should be controlled, AI development?
They talk a lot about this one because I go to many states and AI have a good thing, but also somebody is scared about the AI. In data privacy point of view, and also if AI did something wrong, and who will take responsibility on that, like the auto driving, and then it's cash, and who will pay for that error or something. And yeah, that is an issue talking in the, I think for the law point of view also many on that. And not just only that, but some other country also try to regulate the AI. If somewhat can use the AI for bad issue, and how to prevent that. That is the issue that we need to cope with in the very near future. Yes.
I mean, there was a big debate between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, if you all follow. So it's almost like asking you to pick side. You're going to be on the Zuckerberg side or Elon Musk side. But I'll put it this way, just to give a nice, clean analogy so that everybody can see. It's just like gun laws. We have very gun laws all over the world. Some regulated, some not. Same thing for AI. You can use AI to do a lot of bad things, and you can also use AI to do a lot of good things. Regulating it might mean you are limiting a lot of potential good development of AI, but not regulating it at all might mean you allow people to do a lot of bad things with AI too. So I think it's a thin line, and we have to be very careful when we write down this policy.
Thank you. He is really expert. He has PhD in law. So
exactly. We should let him talk.
Yeah, no, I think that with any technology, there need to be guardrails in place. But when you talk about controlling AI, AI is not actually one thing, right? AI is a whole series of practical engineering techniques that can be applied in a lot of different sectors, a lot of different use cases. So, for example, the safety standards that we want to set as a society will vary if you think about a self-driving car compared to a movie recommendation, right? I mean, the safety consequences there are very different, right? So we'll want to have different standards for different use cases and sectors. There may be some cross-cutting issues. So, for example, how you collect and use data may be something that has an underlying guardrail that would apply across the board, right? But for most other types of regulation, I think that we'll see governments looking at them in a very sector-specific way and coming up with ways of showing that AI systems have been tested and certified for safety, that they've addressed any concerns around fairness risks to society, things like that. So I think the government definitely has a role to play in setting guardrails, but it needs to be done in a thoughtful way, in a way that makes sense for the particular context, and in a way that won't hold back the ability of innovation to be developed for really socially beneficial purposes. So I think that the regulation needs to be very well thought through in that way.
Thank you. Sure. Another question is about new business. If they want to use AI, how they design the system for collecting data for the new business. What we need to prepare?
Data. That's the first thing. There are a lot of startups pitching that they're going to using AI to do blah, blah, blah. And my question to them would be like, how many users do you have? How many data points do you have to collect? A lot of time you can use public data and a lot of things that are available out there. But most of the time, good AI services come from your own users' data because you want a personalized experience for them. You want to give them great recommendation. So to think of a new business that leverage data, I think you have to think about ways you want to collect data too. You're not just going to hand in a form and hoping your customer would fill in a form giving you all kind of information. You need to build some kind of products. You need to provide them with certain value so that they interact with your app, interact with your service, and you get data in return, right? Every time you press a like button on Facebook, your thought goes like, I'm enjoying my social network. I'm interacting with my friends. But at the same time, every time you press the like button, I'm giving away my information. Now Facebook knows I like this particular person. Now Facebook knows that I like this particular topic. But we never thought that way. We really enjoy it, right? Just like watching YouTube. We really enjoy it. They collect information from us all the time. So if you want to be a new business that have data as your core value, as a new asset, you have to think of a creative way to give value to the customer so that you get the data in return, and then you can use that data to add extra value to your users. So I think that's really important. And once you manage to figure out what kind of data you're going to use to put intelligence into your product, then the rest should be easy. If you start with like a very small team, you don't have a lot of AI experts, as we all said, there are a lot of pre-trained models or ready-to-use services out there. You want to classify images, go to Google, just upload the photo. They can tell you directly what's in that images. They can do a lot of fancy thing right now. They provide recommendation AI. Every time your user click on something, express some interest, just keep sending them data. And then whenever you want to give recommendation to this particular user, just go and ask Google, hey, I want recommendation for this particular user. They can give it back to you. So I think a lot of AI applications now would become more of a commodity. Everybody can actually access it and use it very easily. But what you need is someone who actually understands how all this works and how this could create value to your business.
Right, thank you.
I would just add one thing. I think it's very true, right? So thinking about data as a core part is important. I see two models in startups that have worked. Yep. So one is essentially you're not a AI or analytics company to the consumer. You're solving a problem for the consumer. Edigo, based in Thailand, is an example of that, right? It allows you to reserve tables at restaurants at discounts. Everybody loves that. And then actually, after you have users doing that, you actually have a lot of data. And then how do you use that to be better at when, where, which users, and you bootstrap through that. But you're actually solving a non-data problem that gives you a exhaust fume of data as a free price. The other is usually like a team where ex-Facebook, Google data scientists have a tool or a system to actually get a lot of insights out of data. They don't have the data themselves, and then will essentially be the company that goes to large companies who have data sets but don't have the tools or expertise, and then say, give us your data and we can turn around in a day, give you these kind of insights. And we do that very well because we have PhDs from MIT and Stanford. So that's those two models I have seen work and get funding from VCs.
All right, thank you. I think we had you need to ask question. No, you can write it down actually, but I may skip some question because we already talked. So this is another question. Okay, it's pretty seriously actually. So, it's possible that human become obsolete or don't need human anymore? It's a tough question actually. So we need professor actually, but we can share our view.
I think even imagine in the future, if we have AI as your assistant, and you can use AI to earn money for you, maybe you stay doing nothing, just enjoy life, and let AI do for you, earn money for you.
Hope so.
Yeah, so there's often a distinction that is missed when people talk about AI, because when they watch sci-fi movies, then they see something that we call artificial general intelligence. And this is when AI systems can actually learn to do new things that they weren't taught to do, right? They can actually go from one domain to a whole different domain in a way that humans can do. We don't have that kind of AI right now and won't have it anytime soon. What we have now is called narrow AI, which means that AI can be very good at doing particular things that it's been taught to do, but an AI that can identify images is not going to be able to go out and start speaking, right? They're just different systems, and so you have to look at them as being good at particular tasks. So I don't think humans will be obsolete because humans have to teach the AI and have to give the AI what it needs to do, right? So humans are the ones who come up with what we want to do, and then they use AI as helping them to achieve those tasks that they want to achieve faster and better in many cases. So humans will actually have a very key role in being the designers, the guiders of AI, and then hopefully AI will just free up more time for us to use our human faculties to do more interesting and new things.
I hope, I looking for that day actually.
I think AI become the asset.
Okay.
Asset. And if you have a lot of AI, you become rich.
Okay. That's great. Okay, the next question. How to build a trust? Actually, you talk about this one. Actually. But we can add more. How to build a trust on AI in organization where it's old and easy to change something. How to build a trust? Because trust.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I covered a little bit of it earlier, but I think one thing that's very important around building trust is making sure that you have processes in place to address risks around AI. So at Google last year, we created something called the Google AI Principles. And this basically lays out the goals that we're trying to achieve with AI technology. and also set some rules, some red lines of things that we will not use. So for example, we will not use our technology or support others in using it for anything that is meant to cause harm, anything that is used for mass surveillance that violates international norms, anything that is involved in lethal weapons. So these are a set of rules that we had, and then we also, on the flip side, created a lot of processes to implement these principles. So we created, an internal check around machine learning fairness. So when we're designing systems, our engineers actually have to go through a process of checking their data sets, checking how the model's performing for particular groups, to make sure that our systems are addressing concerns around potential bias issues and things like that. So as we've built in those processes, those practices, as well as the rules, the principles, that helps to make sure for both our staff as well as people who are engaging with our systems that a certain level of due diligence has been exercised there. And I think the more that industry as a whole creates those types of norms, the more users will feel trusting of the technology and be more comfortable engaging with AI systems.
I think from a business side, right, trust and is very closely linked to adoption. And that's a big problem that we work on with clients. So how do you make people use it? And one of the prerequisites is that people trust it. So I think it's taking a very user-centric and a design thinking approach is very important about that, right? So to understand that while maybe some new graduates are excited to interact with AI, some older people might want to just still talk to a person-to-person interface, and making sure that at any time people can choose and don't feel that it's forced upon them. I think where use cases that particularly work well for AI in adoption is when you see AI as part of the team that's delivering the service. So instead of outsourcing it to a chatbot and then no one checks anymore if the person is actually being helped or understood, having these kind of AI bots take care of a lot of the heavy lifting, but still having supervisors or people who work alongside that are human that can able to give that kind of user-centric and user touch on that. That I think works well for adoption and builds the trust with people so that they feel they have a choice and when needed can fall back to a human operator.
Okay, thank you. To Dr. Professor Thanarak, as you mentioned on the school that they try to teach, AI background. So, could you give more detail? So it's important on what they need to prepare for human in that level. Why we need to prepare?
I think computing is one of the subjects that changed. Recently we changed that. In the past, computing just only small part in the course. But now computing become the main major. I think for the AI can embed that inside the computing there. And sometimes AI not relate to only the computer. Sometimes we can use something that not the computer to teach AI. The concept of how to use, like what you said, no need to be the technical one, but how to embed that the management component or the thinking, how they think, the design thinking or something there. Okay, and plus with the computing. And I think in the future, AI will have much more in any major, even in the construction, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, IE or something. So they need to teach the AI inside. So but AI will be the one main course inside that one in the future. But how to make them have the skill to use, that is important. Important. Nowadays, if you see the students go outside, some of them still need to have time to prepare themselves in order to have the real works. But how to make them learn inside the university before going out, and then they can ready to use. How to make them ready to use when they graduate. That is a very important point for us. We feel like that sometimes the students go outside need to go to company and learn for 1 year, 2 years before have the real working. Yeah, that is what I want the university to prepare more for the better more for the human resource in the future.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Wilod. Because the question to you is about the young generation development also in AI. You have any ideas and suggestion?
Okay, so this question is for those who want to become AI experts.
Yep.
Okay, start with good foundation. Math is very important, and that's already like the hard part for most people, right? You just stuck with the first calculus, but actually you have to go through the 3-4 version of calculus before you can do all this fancy math, right? So math is really important. A lot of people argue that you can get away with not knowing deep math and do AI. I do agree, and I do think if you want, I think the label would become if you want to be AI scientist or you want to be AI practitioner. If you want to just be practitioner, then I think you might be able to get away without math, but you might become obsolete very soon as soon as the new technologies come. But if you want to become AI scientist and do a deep research on it and try to squeeze like the last bit of AI, then you really have to go deep into the math, the foundation of this. And as I mentioned to all my students, I encourage them to go out and work on real projects. There are a lot of people who study online, one after the other websites. They finish all of the popular courses from top professors around the world. But they enter the workforce and they still cannot add value to the company because this is a really big gap, I would say. Even in Silicon Valley, when I started my career as data scientist, back then, data scientist was a job that almost restricted for those with a PhD. So it's like my team is like 40 people back then when I joined. We all have PhDs. It's like 40 of us who have been doing research. We have genuine curiosity about all this data. We want to dig deep. We want to see how we can get this out. But then getting a PhD means we have a lot of experience in the research field. We have like all this dirty data that we collect, and we have to figure out how to make sense out of it. And by PhDs, I mean all kind of PhDs. On my team, we have PhDs from social science. We have PhDs from physics, from math. And we all have deep knowledge in whatever field of study. But then that research skill really help us try to find the balance between getting the cutting edge technology and help business move forward. So I think that was how it was start, but then the world keeps needing more and more data scientists, so we start having a more relaxing version of data scientists, and new grads this day can be a data scientist. I have no problem with that, but you just need a team that help coach this junior, get them to work on real projects, and they will learn a lot more from that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, a lot of questions. So,
maybe I can add one thing on that. If you're a parent or the talent is even younger, I think the curiosity is important. It's definitely a multidisciplinary field, so it doesn't matter if you're really in math or more on the neuroscience or other areas. But 2 tips: Lego and video games. So the building robots and the software that like just a Lego kit or other things have is amazing to build this kind of muscle already at a young age. And also for me, that I went into computer science was a lot of playing these video games and trying to understand how can I make something like that myself. So if you don't let them play too much with these kind of new AI kind of toys, you might miss out later on.
Thank you. Suggestion. I have kids also. Okay, I will tell them. Okay, so next question. How AI affects the creative industry? Is it possible?
I personally don't think so. It's very easy to make computer creative. How? We just random thing, right? We just generate random thing, and that's how computer gets creative. But by our definition of creative, it means creative, and it's still good. It's still something that we want. So if we want computer to develop creativity, we are still the one who have to teach them all this creativity. Teach them this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. Some people might have heard of generative models. People use a lot of that to create arts, music, and a lot of things in creativity area. So computer can do that based on what we teach them. But then at the end of the day, if it's based on what we teach them, then it's not exactly creativity because it's learned from what we taught them. So it will be continuously in this loop. So I think human would continue to be the one who have the creativity, and that would influence how we teach the robot to become more creative.
All right, thank you.
There's one other thing, and I think AI will also present new ways of engaging with art as well and creative work. So, for example, we have something called the Google Arts and Culture Center, and we've digitized a lot of great art in the world, and then it allows people to search based on particular types of art that they already like. It also allows them to zoom in and really engage with the art in a much more detailed way. To the point where actually the grandson of one of the artists there came and said that he found his name actually hidden in a painting that his grandfather had done that no one had ever seen before because it's hung up in a museum very far away, and you can't actually see that level of detail. So I think that there are, of course, also new ways of recommending content, allow people to engage with more content than they did before. I mean, Netflix is an example of now people, finding content in their own language from their own country that they wouldn't have otherwise engaged with. So AI will also, I think, present opportunities for engagement with art and music that didn't exist previously.
That's great.
For me, I have one more. I think in the future, we may have the movie that created by AI totally.
Okay.
From scenario lighting until the star inside that one. It can generate the star and work for you. No need to hire someone. Storyboard, and also have like the one, what they call the blue one, the one that really famous one in the
Watson?
Avatar.
Avatar.
Yeah, Avatar. Well, Avatar tried to have the computer graphic, but the movement of the face or something, so they catch by the motion movement, and by that they can generate the other human based on that motion and learning from that. And one day maybe they can have their star. And you can build a very beautiful people over there, even if it not exist, and then let them pray for you. Praying for you, and no need to have that one, and so you enjoy your life with that. Yeah, that is the final goal. Maybe can go to that age, but one day, but far away, but I think possible.
All right, thank you. Probably this question for Harry, because it's about is AI suitable for the big firm or small firm can use AI?
Yeah. I would say AI is suitable for all kinds of firms, both big and small. The scale and the challenges are different, but as I think I said at the beginning, I think what we get excited about is the democratization of AI, where large companies make available these kind of very sophisticated models. If governments help also to make available certain data sets, even in a garage or if you're with two people and you have an online shop, you can already use AI technology. So that will be a next wave unleashing it that also SMEs, and that's specifically important in a market like Thailand, which still has a lot of SMEs, how they can essentially go to a Google or an Amazon and shop and put in their basket ready-made kind of AI building blocks, and then how they mash that up, that will be very interesting. So small firms definitely can do that.
Okay, thank you. So probably it should be the last question. So if you have a question, you can ask. No? Okay. My question is, because it's very important, because as we discussed, actually AI can, replace human also sometimes, some tasks, right? So what should we prepare for that future, or what skill people need to have for working with AI something?
I think skill. So we need to know what AI is and what AI can do, what AI cannot do, and then we learn. And sometimes we need to stay with them. That is important. Yeah, I think at this point that what is this and how far they can do, and how we use that AI with your job. This is very important. Sometimes I think the job that you do, if you do the same every day, is nothing new. But One day you find out, oh, this application can help you fasten your job 10 times or something. Why not? Yeah. So but that one, that skill very important. So how to extract and then use them with your job.
Okay.
Improve your
you
job.
have something?
Please.
No, I totally agree. I think the area that people looking to use AI mostly right now is to augment human capability. So we are still very good at a lot of things, but there are a lot of tedious things that we as a human also don't want to do it ourselves. So figure out in your job, what are the things that you keep doing routinely every day, some of the tedious tasks of your job, and embrace it, automate it. And you better use your time, do things that are more creative, do things that require more of your brain, and you will enjoy your life much more as well.
That's great. Happy.
Yeah, I think paradoxically the skills that will be more important are the skills really that only humans can do. So around soft skills, around problem solving, creative thinking, that will add a lot of value in synergy with what AI can unlock. And at the core for me, it's really curiosity. So people who are very curious and are able to then develop that into learning, they will do very well also in the future.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the soft skills are underestimated, and also interdisciplinary learning, as we've talked about. I think that in some places there's an idea now that everything should become very technical and professional in terms of education, but actually these soft skills will be improved by people having an understanding of multiple disciplines when they do their work, to be able to see the connection, between social sciences and technical sciences, even philosophy, things like that. Those are going to be the types of things that will be able to help people draw new connections between technical inputs to do even more with them. And then the final thing I would say is also building a culture where we know how to engage well with technology and not be over-reliant on technology. Because it can help us to do many, many things, but also technologies do have weaknesses and drawbacks, and being prepared to know and not fall victim to common human biases with regard to technology is something that we all can work on, I think, in our lifelong education.
All right, thank you. It's fantastic session, and please give big hand to our panelists. Thank you for coming today. All right.
Well, brilliant contribution by all of you, and especially big round of applause for our moderator, Dr. Chanwit Bunchui, who conduct the conversation brilliantly and draw a lot of intelligence as well as wisdoms to all of us here this afternoon. Well, and now to offer the token of appreciation for all the 4 speakers, I would like to invite to the stage once more the Vice Chairman of Bangkok Post Public Company Limited, Kun Warachai Pitanjit, to be on the stage. Please give him another big round of applause for Kun Warachai. Well, I think that we draw many conclusions from this round, but we might still have got some additional questions towards the interrelationships AI as well as human beings. And now, Kun Warachai will present the token of gratitude to all of our speakers. First of all, I would like to invite once more Mr. Jake Lukey, the head of AI and Data Value, Google Asia Pacific. Well done, Mr. Lukey. Big round of applause for Mr. Lukey, the head of AI and Data Value, Google Asia Pacific. Well, I do like culture and art in relations to AI. This is beyond imagination that both will have to coexist together. And Mr. Harry Sip, the partner, McKinsey and Company. Great contribution from your side as well, Harry. Thank you very much for coming and joining the conference today. And also Professor Dr. Thanarakthi Ramankong. Well, give a big hand for Professor. Well, I do like what he said. We need to identify what we can do, what we can't do, and then find a way that AI can complement human beings. And also another good contribution by the co-founder of Skooldio, Dr. Virod Chirapathanakun. Well, I wish that we had many hours more, and I would like to call in a group photo opportunity. Kun Warachai as well as the 4 speakers upon the stage. And also, I would like to invite on the stage for group photo shooting the director and member of executive committee, Bangkok Post Public Company Limited, Mr. Ekarit Bunpiti. Well, big round of applause for Kun Ekarit here as well. And also another director and member of the executive committee, Bangkok Post Public Company Limited, Dr. Ronishit Mahathanaput. Yeah, please give him a big warm welcome as well. Well, this group picture really represents another good input for business community as we draw a lot of good inputs, wisdom, intellectuals from the speakers from this panel discussions. Big round of applause once more for all the gentlemen on the stage. Well, and this is brought to you by the Bangkok Post Conference. Thank you very much. This is only half of the conference 2019, the Bangkok Post Conference. We still have got the second one, which is equally exciting. Down the road, Xavier or Villain. And let's meet each other after the break. And now you will all have 15 minutes break, refreshing yourself. And then we will come back here to this room at approximately 3:30 as we will start the second panel discussions. Down the road, Xavier or Villain. See you around.